Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this first in-person meeting of Heritage Oakville, and I guess it must be more than 2 years. I must say it was getting easy just to meet each other virtually and to stay at home, especially over the winter months. But it's nice that it's a nice day, and it's my birthday again today, and I think this is the third time I've had a birthday for a meeting, which suggests I may have been on this committee maybe longer than I should have been. But anyway, I'm pleased to call the meeting to order and to remind everybody that we are an advisory committee and that any recommendations that we make today to Council will be dealt with at the Planning and Development meeting, and that will take place on July the 11th at 6:30. And anybody watching who wishes to delegate for that meeting should let the Clerk's Department know by noon the previous day. I want to thank everybody the technical people who work hard to make all this thing happen. And just as we get started, I'd like to welcome the real Kurt Bigger here. He's been acting up until now, but now he is, in fact, the manager of Policy Planning and Heritage. So it's nice to see you here, Kurt, in that capacity. So we have no regrets, I think, Madam Secretary, because I can see we're all here, and George is here virtually. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest with respect to any matters before us today? None, thank you. The next item is the confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. Councillor Duddick makes a motion to accept these. They were circulated. Are there any comments? Is there anyone opposed to the motion? The motion is carried and the minutes are accepted. Okay, so the first item on our agenda today is item 4.1, and that's a heritage permit application with respect to 87 Allen Street. I think David had started this off. A number of us were on that site visit, and David was there, but Carolyn is now taking that on. So over to you, Carolyn.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Will the presentation come up? So again, this is 87 Allen Street. We can go to the next slide, or I should say the second slide in the PowerPoint presentation, to the location map. Here we go. Perfect, thank you. So again, located in the 1st and 2nd Street District on the east side of Allen Street, just south of Lakeshore Road. Next slide. The property again is designated as part of the district. It contains a circa 1900 two-story stucco house. And the current application is to demolish a one-story sunroom wing. We don't have the date on it, but we believe it's likely 1920s or 30s. And to replace that sunroom wing with a new wing, but with putting a second-story addition over the existing sunroom replacement. And the second part of the application is to construct a new two-story addition with a garage incorporated into it on the first floor, and that is to the the northeast of the existing heritage house. Next slide. Here are some street views showing the house. You can see the sunroom wing to the right, the one story tucked behind that bush. Again, that is to be replaced with the second story added on top. Next slide. And here's the house from a bit farther from the north along Allen Street, and the new garage addition would be located behind that vehicle on the left side of the house. Next slide. Showing another view of the house from the front elevation along Allen Street, and the existing house is to be restored and retained. There are no changes being proposed to the two-story portion of the existing house. Next slide. The left image is looking at the north elevation of the existing house. Again, no changes proposed there. And the right-hand view is coming around towards the back of the house. Next slide. On the left-hand side, another view of the house from the rear. You can see the sunroom addition on the left-hand side there. Again, all of that portion of the heritage house is to remain. And on the right-hand side is a view of the existing sunroom with the historic wood windows, which are to be salvaged and reused within the new replacement sunroom. Next slide. Here's a site plan application showing, site plan showing the property. So again, the existing house is outlined in that red or pink, and the 2 hatched areas are the proposed new additions. So on the right-hand side, you can see an extension of the sunroom. Again, the sunroom will be actually replaced completely, but in terms of its footprint, it will have about 3 feet to the south and along the full 20-foot length of the sunroom. That will be added space. And then on the top left-hand corner, you can see the new addition, the 2-story addition with a garage incorporated, set back from the existing heritage house. Next slide. Here's a roof plan, just showing again how those portions are all integrated. Next slide. This is the front elevation. Again, in the gray is, yep.
Would it be possible to just move the display down to the bottom right so we can see the full drawing?
Perfect, thank you. Thanks for that. So this is, you can more easily see it here within our room at least. So the gray portions are the existing house, and so you can see where the sunroom would be extended, and then the second story of the sunroom would be set back and tucked in within the existing roof, and I'll show that south elevation after this. On the left-hand side, you can see the new 2-story garage portion and living space addition to the north, and on all of these you can see that the roof lines are significantly lower than the existing house. So this is a view from the rear. So the 2-story addition on your right there with another lower 2-story portion in the middle. Most of this is glazing, so it's a lot of glass to connect the existing stucco house with the new garage addition with wood cladding. And then on the left-hand side, again, you can see the rebuilt sunroom. They are proposing sliding doors on the back portion that are currently not there in the existing sunroom, so that will be a change. But then the existing windows would be incorporated on the other elevations as you see it today. And you can see in the second story, they've proposed to do a flat roof, continuing the existing roof design of the sunroom, and to do that in the second story as well, because it allows them to retain or keep visible the existing gable roof of the heritage house. And that same treatment with a flat roof has been proposed for this section that connects the garage portion to the existing heritage house. Next slide. So this is a view from the north. So that bottom portion there, 1-story portion would be the garage at the front. Again, they're retaining that the gable type of roof line, similar to the heritage house, but everything is smaller and set back from the heritage house. Next slide. And here we are looking from the south elevation. So again, you can see that sunroom reconstructed, and then the 2nd-story sunroom that is a bit smaller and tucked in below the roof line. And then you can see on the right-hand side the wood siding portion of the new garage portion addition. And you can see on the upper level they're proposing wood windows, and the lower level they have some sliding doors facing the backyard. Next slide. Here's a rendering showing the house. Of course, renderings are not perfect, but just to kind of give you an idea, to show you that they are looking to do a dark wood siding on the new addition to the left to help it sort of recede behind the heritage house. And then the sunroom addition, they're proposing to keep the existing stucco look to match the heritage house and the existing sunroom, and they would apply that to the 2nd story as well. Next slide. So there was a minor variance that was approved for this application. For those of you who may have been on site earlier with an earlier proposal for the site, I believe they had proposed a few minor variances, including for the rear of the garage. They were able to minimize the size of the new additions to avoid all those minor variances except for lot coverage. So they were approved at the Committee of Adjustment for a lot coverage of 26.93, whereas the max is 25%. The additions are to the side and to the rear of the heritage house. They're lower in height. The new sunroom does have a similar footprint. It's a little bit larger, but it has a modest size 2nd story tucked in, and of course would be incorporating the historic windows. The design is considered to be a traditional design of the new additions. It's compatible but distinguishable from the heritage house. Materials are traditional, but again, a little bit different with the garage portion using wood cladding to help distinguish the two. And they're continuing the stucco on the sunroom portion and proposing multi-pane wood windows on the new additions. And again, no changes to the existing heritage house. Next slide. So here's the staff recommendation. It's that the heritage permit application for the demolition of the existing sunroom and the construction of a new sunroom addition and a new garage addition be approved, subject to the following: that final details on the windows, doors, and cladding materials be submitted to staff for final approval, which is, as you know, become a standard recommendation from staff. And of course, that the permit expire 2 years from the date of approval. And I believe we do have the contractor for the applicants available. I know the owner was away and wasn't able to attend today, but if you have any specific questions about design or construction, hopefully they will be able to answer them if I'm not able to.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn. There were 2 windows on the south elevation that are now on either side of the chimney that are now going to be blocked off by the second-story addition. The openings look original. Are these windows original? Do you know?
Is this on the, the north elevation?
Oh, the south
elevation.
It's above the sunroom. There are two little windows either side of the chimney.
On the second story, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. So that new addition would be incorporated over top of that, and the
Yes.
idea would be to the openings, I think inside. I don't have the floor plans up since we're not able to, but it will be opened up inside on either side to allow, access just to be moving into that new addition
Yeah,
space.
but we lose those 2 windows.
But the windows themselves, yes, they would actually be interior openings at that point.
Yeah. Do you know if these were heritage windows or had they been replaced?
To be honest, I'm not sure. I didn't see it in Dave's notes. Perhaps the contractor could speak to it. We could ask that they be made available for salvage if they are. We could also just add an element in the recommendation to say that any historic elements not being retained as part of this application be made available for salvage, as more of a blanket statement.
If you do that.
Okay, sure.
Before we get there, that might be helpful.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn. Any questions of Carolyn? Okay, don't see any. Now, I think, as you indicated, the contractor is available. That's Mr. Rockcliffe, I think. Is Mr. Rockcliffe wanting to speak to the committee?
No, I'm okay. It was a great presentation. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the contractor? No, thank you, Mr. Rockcliffe. Okay, so we're now confined to the board. Are there any comments, any questions, Councillor Gittings?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Carolyn, question regarding there we go. Question for Carolyn. Always a concern when we see demolition. Could you just take us through the sunroom being demolished? Because that was built early 1900s?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. I believe it was 1920s or 1930s, and I maybe Mr. Rockcliffe can speak to this more. But my understanding was that there were some issues or concerns with the footings, the existing structure, and so the idea was to rebuild it. And while doing so, they thought they could get a little bit additional space by extending it 3 feet. I think originally it was quite significantly larger, but after the Heritage Committee members reviewed it and staff reviewed it, they asked them to bring it back. So they're extending it by 3 feet to the south, and to still have the same appearance of the sunroom, but rebuilding it, with the historic materials, but with something that's a little bit more, strong in terms of its foundation. And then the second story idea was to just get a little bit more space off the principal bedroom, is my understanding.
There, is that on? Yes. Yay. I appreciate that. So we feel comfortable that it was necessary to demolish? It was that far gone?
I don't know that we would say it's that far gone in terms of it's not falling down right now, but I'm basing this on the assessment of David Addington and the Heritage Committee members who were there, and their understanding was that it made sense, and the idea would that the cultural heritage value of the property would not be completely negatively impacted by the removal of it, because the idea is we're still keeping the character of that sunroom in its reconstruction.
and they are reusing the windows, and they're maintaining the design elements in the new extension. George?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I expressed the comments that I have to give you now to David at the time, and I think it's unfortunate because you've raised the point of the two windows to the south, and I think if you look at the project, if you drive along or walk along Robinson Street, and if you are coming up Allen Street from the south, that's the major projection of the house is from that view, and I think to lose those two windows would be to completely change the perspective of that house and that property. And I expressed that to David at the time, and I, excuse me, not that I think he may have taken that into consideration, but I think it's unfortunate that you then add a second story to that south wing, which completely obscures, I think, that view, that side of the house and that perspective. So I expressed that to David, and I just mentioned that to the committee today since I'm not able to be there to express it in person. Thank you.
Thank you, George. I'm just waiting for my red lights all to come on. Brenda?
Plan drawing? Would it be possible to see that site plan again? Thank you. Addition relative to, could you slide it back and retain the front window, the first window closest to the door? Thank you.
Okay, anyone else got a question or a comment? Jerry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do recall George's comment on site, and if we look at page 16 of 41, it's not labeled, but if you go to page 15 and just turn the page, you'll see the view that is from Robinson Street and gives that, I think what George is getting to is the character of the chimney sweeping up the one-story porch addition. It has a little bit more of a softer landing to the open area that is in to the south of the building. So I do recall that, and I recall that the reasoning, my recollection for the reasoning of the second-story addition was that they required more space in the second story in order to facilitate a washroom and a closet, an ensuite closet, if I'm not mistaken. And so the question was, if they're going to have a washroom and a closet, how will they be retaining the windows, and how will they be covering it up to mitigate that solid void mass from that side? Having said that, and just kind of leaving that aside, in general, I think that the addition follows the rhythms and character of the Heritage House. I think that's done very nicely. Leaving aside George's comment, like basically not dealing with that in my comments right now. And just, I know that renderings don't do justice to the final product. I would just say that I'm glad to see that it's coming back to staff for details, because I think God is in the details in this case. So in terms of how the new addition will be done, maybe a little bit more emphasis on the detailing of the eaves and the trims around the windows and doors, etc. So thank you, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Jerry. Any other comments or discussion? So we have a staff recommendation in front of us, and I think, Carolyn, you might want to put that back up again. because you were going to be just adding a little bit about the availability of salvage materials.
Yes, I'll read it out with my additions. So again, we have the first part, that the application be approved, subject to the following. That's A, that final details on the windows, doors, and cladding materials be submitted to Heritage Planning staff for approval. And I'm adding B, that any historic materials removed be made available for salvage. And then it would continue on to number 2, that the permit expire 2 years from approval.
So any heritage materials removed from, so that would be removed from the site, because they are removing some but reusing them on site.
Right.
Because that's what's happening to the windows, first level of the sunroom.
Correct. So, I mean, you could get more
That's
detailed,
okay.
but that's okay.
That's
Okay.
fascinating. No, as long as we understand that. Because your final details on the windows, that would include the reuse, repair, reuse, restoration of the existing windows that will be maintained on that first level of the sunroom. Okay, so everybody understands that. Okay, so do we have a motion? Is somebody prepared to move that motion? Thank you. Russ? Russ. Okay, Russ has moved at the staff recommendation that you see up there, with the addition of the B, to reuse any heritage materials not reused on site, that they be made available for salvage. Is there any further discussion on that motion? George, you can hear that motion. Is there anyone opposed to the motion?
I'm opposed to it.
Thanks, George.
I'm opposed to it, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I hear you, George. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else opposed to that motion? Seeing none, the motion is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so the next item on our agenda, there's just information items. And the first one is with respect to the delegation of heritage permits. And these have been listed there, and as usual, if anyone wants any further information about these, they should talk to staff afterwards. It is important that we keep an eye on this, because this is part of our monitoring of this process. And I know a review of the process is kind of in somebody's job jar and is being looked at. And will come back to us in due course. And then the second item for information is the revised membership list that reflects that Daniela is no longer a member of the committee and that there is a vacancy. So, Councillor Giddings?
There we go. Moving forward, could we receive updates as information items for the work on the Heritage Conservation District? I think it'll be of interest to the committee, and to keep us all up to date in terms of what's going on. And that way we can let the advisory group that's working down in the district aware of that as well, so they can participate.
That'd be good if you could do that, just to keep us, give us an update as it proceeds, because we do like to know what's happening down there. Okay, would somebody, perhaps Councillor Giddings, while he's on deck, would move that the information items be received? Thank you, Councillor Giddings. Is there anyone opposed to that motion? No, the motion is approved. Thank you very much. So the date and time of our next meeting is the 26th day of July, and I guess it's here. And I know that today we stretched the town's budget to its limit with the sticky buns and the coffee, so it's unlikely that that will happen again, because you know it doesn't usually happen. But anyway, we'll wait and see. Okay, so somebody like to move adjournment? Thank you very much, Bob. Okay, nobody's opposed to that, so the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for the gift of your time. Lovely to see everybody. A pleasant change. Thank you very much.